"Back table, ma'am, family seats are up front." That's what the young usher told me as he handed me a folded card with just one word on it, Loretta. Not mother of the groom, not even Mrs. Hayes, just Loretta. I followed his pointing hand past the white draped tables filled with laughing relatives, sparkling champagne flutes, and gleaming silver cutlery, past the stage where the DJ tested the mic, past the front rows where the bride's family sat glowing in coordinated outfits. And then, at the very end of the hall, right by the swinging doors of the kitchen, I found my seat. A wobbly chair tucked at a table of strangers, distant cousins, and old co-workers who barely knew my son. Every time the kitchen door swung open, the smell of garlic and grease washed over me, along with the clang of trays and the hiss of steam. My chest tightened. My son Marcus was getting married just steps away, but I was hidden in the shadows as if my presence were an afterthought, as if my decades of sacrifice meant nothing. I smoothed the hem of my navy dress, the one I'd been told was too dark for a wedding, and tried to hold my head high. From the head table, the bride's parents beamed under the spotlight. The MC's voice boomed, "Let's give a round of applause to the Whitmans who made this day possible." The room erupted in cheers. No one glanced toward the back. No one thought to ask who else might have made this day possible. My palms were damp. My throat burned. I'd promised myself I wouldn't make a scene, that I'd swallow the humiliation for Marcus's happiness. But as I sat there, the walls seemed to close in the laughter at the front ringing like mockery. They said I didn't belong up front, I thought, staring at the glittering chandeliers, but every light in this room was paid for by me. My name is Loretta Hayes, and I am 56 years old. For the past 3 decades, I have worked in the kitchen of a hospital in Cleveland, Ohio, first scrubbing pots, later serving on the dietary team, and eventually running the late shift. It is not glamorous work, but it kept food on the table and the lights on when my husband passed away, and I was left to raise my son Marcus alone. From the moment Marcus was born, I made him my purpose. I worked double shifts, sometimes triple. There were weeks when I barely saw daylight, only the fluorescent glow of the hospital corridors. I gave up vacations, new clothes, even medical checkups for myself, just so Marcus could have opportunities I never had. I remember the year his middle school announced a science camp trip. He wanted to go so badly, but the fee was almost 2 weeks of my wages. I sold my wedding ring, the last valuable piece of jewelry I had left to pay for it. I told him I had found some savings. He never knew. I still remember his face glowing with joy as he packed his bag. That smile was worth more than any diamond. When Marcus got older, his dreams shifted to technology, computers coding things that I never understood. But I understood hard work, and I knew that if he believed in it, I had to believe in him. College tuition nearly crushed me. I picked up overnight shifts at a nursing home mopping floors until my back screamed just so his tuition checks wouldn't bounce. There were nights when I cried into my pillow wondering how much longer I could hold on. But then Marcus would send me a photo of his grades, or he would call and tell me about a project he'd finished, and suddenly the exhaustion melted into pride. He was climbing toward a future that would take him far beyond the walls of the hospital kitchen. When Marcus met Chloe, he seemed happier than I'd ever seen him. She came from a different world, a family with vacation homes, college funds, and social clubs I had only read about in magazines. At first I was intimidated, but if she loved him and made him happy, that was enough for me. I wanted to show her family that I could stand beside them, that Marcus didn't have to feel less than because of where he came from. So when the wedding planning began, I offered to cover the costs. Not just part of it, all of it. The venue, the catering, the flowers, the band, the photographer, even the bar tab. My savings, my retirement account, every overtime check I had put aside, it all went into making sure Marcus's wedding was the dream he and Chloe envisioned. No one asked me to do it. I volunteered. I told myself it was an investment in his future, a final gift before I stepped back and let him build his own family. I thought it would bring us closer. I thought it would earn me a place at the table, maybe even at the center of it. But as the months of planning went on, something shifted. My opinions weren't needed. My suggestions were brushed aside. Seating charts were sent out without my name near the front. The family group chat buzzed with updates that excluded me. Whenever I raised a question, the answer was always the same. Chloe's parents are handling it. I tried to smile to remind myself that this was their day. But deep down, the truth hurt. I wasn't just being overlooked, I was being erased. And by the time the wedding day came, I began to realize I hadn't been written into their story as the proud mother of the groom. I had been cast as a footnote tucked away at the back of the room. In the beginning, I convinced myself the little slights were just misunderstandings. Planning a wedding is stressful, I told myself. People get overwhelmed. Maybe they don't mean to leave me out. But as the months passed, the exclusions piled up until they were impossible to ignore. The first time it happened was with the seating chart. An email arrived with a glossy PDF titled Whitman Hayes Wedding Seating Plan. My eyes scanned down the list of family of the groom. My name wasn't there. Instead, I was tucked into a miscellaneous table near co-workers from Chloe's marketing firm and a pair of cousins I had never met. I emailed Marcus to ask if it was a mistake. His reply came hours later. "Mom, don't stress. It's just a draft. Chloe's handling the details." But the final chart didn't change. Then there was the dress. I had saved to buy a simple but elegant navy gown. When I showed Chloe, hoping for approval, her smile tightened. "It's pretty," she said carefully. "But we were thinking something lighter. Maybe beige, it would photograph better. Beige, as if my presence should fade into the wallpaper." The wedding photographer hosted a pre-shoot session for family members. I stood ready beside Marcus, proud to be included. But as the photographer lined people up, he waved me to the side. "Just the immediate family, please." I froze. Immediate family. My only son was standing there, but apparently I didn't qualify. Chloe's parents smiled for the camera arms around Marcus. I lingered at the edge, clutching my purse like a shield. It wasn't just the big moments. It was the constant drip of tiny cuts, group chats that suddenly went silent when I joined. Rehearsal dinner invitations sent late or not at all. Chloe's mother Elaine saying casually at a tasting, "We've covered what matters," as if her credit card defined the event while my checks quietly cashed did not. I tried talking to Marcus. One evening I called him after my shift. "Baby, I feel like I'm being pushed aside. I don't mind Chloe's family helping, but Mom," he interrupted, tired. "It's Chloe's day. Let's not make it about you." His words stung more than he knew. I had spent years making everything about him, his meals, his schooling, his dreams. Now, when I asked for a seat at his side, I was told I was asking too much. The night before the rehearsal, another blow landed. A message came. "Due to timing, we'll skip speeches from the groom's side to keep things on schedule." Translation: I was not invited to speak. My one chance to share pride in my son, to welcome his new wife, had been erased from the agenda. I lay awake in bed staring at the ceiling. The fan whirred, the clock ticked, but my mind churned. I remembered scrubbing hospital trays at 2 a.m, hands raw from bleach, whispering to myself, "This is for Marcus. One day he'll understand." Now here I was, shut out of the very day I had worked for. Still I told myself to endure, for him, for his happiness. Maybe once the vows were said, once the pressure lifted, things would return to normal. I would sit quietly, smile through the pain, and remind myself it wasn't forever. But each fresh insult carved deeper. At the rehearsal, Elaine adjusted the flower arrangements and announced, "We want everything to look perfect. Appearances are important." She didn't glance my way. When I stepped forward to ask a question about timing, she brushed me off with a quick, "We've got it covered." Covered like a stain swept beneath a rug. Even the vendors seemed to absorb the message. The bandleader directed his questions to the Whitmans. The caterer asked Robert about head counts, and when I reminded them I had signed the contracts, they smiled politely, then returned to the people they assumed held authority. My silence grew heavier with each passing day. Friends at work asked if I was excited. I smiled weakly and said, "Of course." How could I explain that the wedding I was paying for felt like someone else's celebration, that I was a ghost at my own son's milestone? The breaking point came a week before the ceremony. The final invoice for the open bar arrived. My name was printed in bold, "Loretta Hayes, contract holder." I forwarded it to Chloe, thinking she might finally recognize my role. Instead, she replied curtly, "Thanks, we'll make sure it gets settled. Don't worry about it." Settled. With whose money I was the one wiring the funds. Yet somehow credit belonged to her family. That night, Marcus called. "Mom, please don't make waves," he said gently. "I just want things smooth. For Chloe." I swallowed my anger. "Of course," I whispered. But in that moment, something inside me cracked. I wasn't angry at him alone. I was angry at myself for thinking endless sacrifices would guarantee respect, for believing silence would earn gratitude. By the time the wedding day arrived, my hope had drained away. I had bought the flowers, the champagne, the chandeliers overhead. I had written check after check, each one a piece of my future. And in return, I had been given a chair at the back and a reminder to stay quiet. What they didn't know was that silence has its limits, and mine had already been reached. The wedding day arrived, bathed in late summer light, warm and golden. Guests streamed into the grand hall dressed in suits and sequined gowns, while the scent of roses and eucalyptus floated through the air. Everything sparkled from the chandeliers to the polished marble floor. But for me, the shine only made the shadows sharper. When the usher guided me to the very back near the kitchen doors, I forced myself to smile. My chair wobbled slightly, and each time the door swung open, the sound of sizzling pans and clattering trays broke through the music. I smoothed my dress and whispered, "This is Marcus's day. Don't ruin it." At the head table, the Whitmans glowed under the spotlight. Elaine adjusted her pearl necklace while Robert raised his glass for the cameras. The MC boomed into this microphone, "Let's all thank the Whitman family for their generosity in making this day possible." Applause erupted, cheers filled the hall, and I sat frozen, my hands trembling in my lap. Not a word about me, not a word about the woman who had quietly signed every check. The photographer organized a group photo on stage. "Family first," he called. I stood ready to join, but he glanced at my name tag and shook his head. "Just the immediate family, ma'am." His hand directed me aside. I stepped back, humiliation burning my cheeks as flashes captured the smiling Whitmans, pressed close to Marcus and Chloe. I was a shadow cut out of my own son's wedding album. Then came the toasts. Robert stood tall, his voice booming. We spared no expense to make today perfect for Marcus and Chloe. Laughter and applause followed, glasses clinked. Each word pierced me deeper. My throat tightened, but no one looked my way. To them, I was invisible, a background figure, someone who didn't matter. Just when I thought I couldn't sink lower, a staff member approached, discreet but firm. She handed me a clipboard. "We'll need your signature for the open bar extension, Ms. Hayes," she said. My name, my contract, my responsibility. For a moment I hesitated, the pen heavy in my hand. Signing meant continuing the charade, letting them take credit for what was mine. The DJ tapped the microphone, his cheerful voice filling the hall. "And now let's hear a few words from the mother of the groom." Gasps rippled across the tables. It hadn't been in the program. I knew it was an afterthought, a token gesture, but the microphone was suddenly in my hand. I stood slowly, my knees trembling but my back straight. The hall quieted, hundreds of eyes turning toward me. For a heartbeat, I considered the promise I'd made to myself to stay silent for Marcus's happiness. But then I remembered every sleepless night, every dollar scraped together, every dismissal, every moment I was told to fade into the background. I lifted the microphone. My voice shook at first, but grew stronger with each word. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. It's a beautiful celebration, and since my name has not been mentioned yet, allow me to introduce myself properly. I am Loretta Hayes, the person who paid for every single thing you see in this room." Gasps echoed. Forks clattered onto plates. Robert's glass slipped in his hand. Chloe's smile froze, and Marcus's eyes widened in disbelief. I continued my words steady now, each syllable sharp as glass. The chandeliers above us, I signed the check. The flowers on the tables. My account, the photographer, the band, the champagne in your glasses. It all came from me. Every bill, every contract, every wire transfer has my name on it, and I have the receipts to prove it. I reached into my purse and pulled out a thick folder heavy with invoices and contracts. The venue manager, Ms. Patel, nodded from the corner, confirming what I said. The hall fell into a stunned silence. I looked directly at my son. I didn't ask for credit. I didn't ask for applause. All I wanted was respect, to be acknowledged, to be treated as if I belonged at the front of this room beside my son on his wedding day. My voice broke slightly, but I pressed on. But instead I was hidden in the shadows, ignored, erased. Not anymore. I lowered the folder onto the nearest table with a thud that echoed through the silence. The truth was out hanging heavy in the air. There was no going back. For a long moment, no one moved. The chandeliers sparkled above us, but the room itself seemed frozen in place. All I could hear was the soft hum of the speakers, a faint clink as someone set down their glass too quickly. I held the microphone steady. My hands no longer trembled. The folder of receipts sat on the table, a silent witness. One by one, I lifted a page and read aloud the deposit for the venue, the invoice for the floral arrangements, the catering balance, the photographer's retainer. Each amount was precise, every check signed in my name. The numbers added up to more than $42,000. I turned toward the staff. Ms. Patel, would you confirm whose signature is on the master contract? The venue manager rose, her voice calm but clear. All agreements for this event are under Ms. Loretta Hayes. A ripple went through the room. Guests glanced at one another, whispers spreading like wildfire. Robert Whitman's face flushed crimson. Elaine's fingers clutched her pearls so tightly I thought the strand might snap. Chloe's smile had collapsed into a thin line. Marcus sat stiffly, his eyes darting between me and his new in-laws. I could see the storm in his face, shock, confusion, maybe even shame. But I didn't look away. For the first time all evening, I had his full attention. I never wanted the spotlight, I said softly, but my voice carried. I didn't write these checks to boast or compete. I did it because I wanted my son to have a day he would remember with pride. I wanted him to stand tall, not worry about appearances, not feel less than anyone else. But what I wanted most was something no money could buy: respect. My words hung in the air, sharper than any accusation. A few guests lowered their eyes, embarrassed by the truth revealed so nakedly before them. I closed the folder with finality. So now you know who truly made this night possible. Every light above your head, every flower on this table, every sip of champagne, it came from me. And yet I was seated at the back as though I had no place here. The silence was suffocating. I could almost feel the weight of it pressing against my chest. But beneath it was something else: relief. For the first time, the burden of secrecy was gone. They could no longer pretend I didn't matter. Robert shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tight. Elaine whispered something hurriedly to Chloe, who refused to meet my eyes. Marcus finally opened his mouth, but no words came. He looked like a boy again, caught between two worlds he didn't know how to reconcile. I took one last look around the hall, scanning the faces that had dismissed me, ignored me, or simply forgotten I existed. Their expressions told the story: disbelief, shame, and perhaps a grudging recognition. I lowered the microphone. I don't need applause. I don't need thanks. But from this moment on, I will not be invisible. The crowd remained hushed. Some guests avoided my gaze, others stared openly, and somewhere in the back, I heard a single pair of hands clap once before falling silent again. The truth was out, and the night was no longer theirs alone. The hall remained stunned after my words. The silence was broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioner and the soft buzz of the lights. I could feel the weight of 100 stares pressing against my back, but I didn't flinch. For once, I wasn't the quiet woman in the corner. I was standing in the very center, holding the truth in my own hands. I handed the microphone back to the DJ, but before I stepped away, I turned to the staff. "Please make sure the gratuities are distributed as agreed," I said firmly. From my purse, I pulled out sealed envelopes I had prepared in advance, tips for the servers, the band, the photographer, every vendor. Gasps whispered through the crowd as I laid them down. I had thought of everything because I knew what it meant to be overlooked. Tonight, no one who worked hard would leave feeling invisible. Then, in a voice that carried to the farthest corner, I added, "And as the contract holder, I'm making one adjustment. The open bar will close at 10 o'clock as per the original agreement. After that, it becomes cash only." There was a murmur, shock mixed with disappointment. Robert's face tightened with fury. Elaine looked as if someone had doused her in cold water. but the staff nodded. The order was valid. It was my signature that bound the night, not theirs. For the first time, authority belonged to me, and I used it. I returned to my seat with steady steps. Aunt Bernice, my longtime neighbor and friend, caught my hand and whispered, "About time, Loretta." Her eyes sparkled with pride. The rest of the evening unfolded under a different light. Guests glanced at me with newfound respect, or at least awareness. Some avoided my gaze, ashamed of having believed the illusion. Others nodded politely, as if to say, "We see you now." It wasn't forgiveness or applause I wanted. It was acknowledgement, and that at least I finally received. When the music swelled, I rose and invited Aunt Bernice to dance. We laughed as we swayed across the floor, a deliberate presence at the very heart of the celebration. The photographer raised his camera, and this time I didn't step aside. The flash captured me smiling head high, refusing to disappear. In the days that followed, the fallout began. Marcus showed up at my door the next afternoon, still in his wrinkled suit. His voice cracked as he spoke. "Mom, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you let me handle it?" I looked him in the eye. "Because, Marcus, every time I tried, you told me it was Chloe's day. You let them erase me." And I couldn't stay silent any longer. He hung his head, shame written across his face. "I'm sorry. I thought keeping the peace was the right thing. I didn't realize I was losing you in the process." I softened. He was still my son, still the boy I had raised with every ounce of my strength. "I didn't want to embarrass you," I said gently, "but I needed you to see me, to remember what it cost to get here." Chloe came later that week, her tone clipped, her words careful. "I didn't know you felt excluded," she began. But I stopped her with a raised hand. "This isn't about feelings, Chloe. This is about respect. You don't have to love me. You don't even have to like me. But you will treat me as the mother of your husband, not as someone to be tucked away when convenient." She said nothing at first, then nodded stiffly. Perhaps it wasn't agreement, but it was acknowledgement, and that was enough. As for the money, I drew my boundaries. No more blank checks, I told Marcus. No more covering costs to buy a place at the table. I've done my part. From here on out, you two will build your life with your own hands. He nodded this time without protest. He knew I meant it. Instead of gifting them a honeymoon fund as I had once planned, I redirected the money. Half went into my retirement savings, replenishing what I had sacrificed. The other half I donated to a local scholarship program for underprivileged students, young people like Marcus once was, with dreams bigger than their wallets. If my money could buy dignity, it would be theirs, not wasted on people who treated me as invisible. The Whitmans, once so eager to brag, avoided the subject of expenses afterward. At church and in the community, whispers spread about who had truly paid for the glamorous wedding. Their pride had been punctured, their arrogance exposed. For me, though, the true victory was quieter. I had reclaimed my dignity. I had drawn a line that no one, not Marcus, not Chloe, not her parents, would ever be able to cross again. In the quiet weeks after the wedding, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. For years, I believed that sacrifice alone would earn gratitude, that if I gave enough time, money, energy, my place would be secured. But I learned the hard truth: respect isn't bought. It is demanded, and it is protected. That night at the wedding was not about revenge. It was about dignity. I didn't raise my voice to humiliate anyone. I spoke because I could no longer allow silence to erase me. I had lived too many years in the background, too many nights convincing myself that endurance was the same as honor. But honor requires boundaries. Without them, even family can mistake love for weakness. Marcus and I are finding our way back. Our conversations are slower, more deliberate. He has apologized more than once, and I can see the weight of realization in his eyes. Whether Chloe and I will ever be close, I cannot say. But she knows now that I will not disappear, and that is enough. If there is one lesson I want others to take from my story, it is this: honor your parents while you still can. Do not let weddings, wealth, or appearances blind you to the sacrifices that built your life. Because dignity may stay silent for a time, but when it finally speaks, it cannot be ignored.